All right, Yusuf, Ayman, everything is going good with the streaming and ready to go?
Yes, we're good to go. Everything is 100% A-OK on the technical side.
Awesome. Okay, well, assalamu alaikum, everybody. Thank you all for joining. This is our Building Tech Around Social Impact panel. I'm super excited for everybody to get to know these amazing Muslim icons who've been doing really great things in the tech community and also the Muslim community. And I think social impact is really important to consider, especially as we're realizing that that market is increasing and there's a lot of interest in that. And as our hackathon has several tracks that focus on social impact. So we're hoping that you guys are able to learn something from this, take away some advice and be able to apply this towards your hackathon project and also maybe side projects in the future as well. That being said, I'll introduce the speakers and then we can get started into the panel questions. And yeah. All right. So starting with Nadah. Nadah is the founder of Muslim National Organization of 1,600 women in the tech industry, mashallah. Nadah graduated from UCSD with a master's in computer science and currently works as a software engineer at Facebook. Anas is the co-founder of Chartio, a machine learning app with over 100,000 downloads that assists with recognition and recitation of the Holy Quran. Anas graduated from Carnegie Mellon with an MS in robotics and worked at Amazon before leaving to work at Chartio full-time. Nitasha currently works as a product manager at Rally Health and also hosts her own YouTube show, Sham Ki Chai with Nitasha, where she has candid conversations with Pakistanis over a cup of chai. Nitasha graduated from Simon Fraser University with a bachelor's in computer science, and she also founded Unboxed, a company dedicated to changing the media narrative around women by highlighting the accomplishments of inspiring women across all disciplines. Abdallah is a rising senior at UC Berkeley and founder of the early stage startup Inara that is formerly known as Scholar Hub. Inara is a learning management system that has been adopted by several schools and universities in Morocco and will soon be piloted at one of the largest universities in Europe. That being said, I would love to give the floor to you all to just introduce yourselves, share some things that you've been working on in the tech for social good sphere, and the journey that got you there. Whoever wants to start off is fair game.
I can go on first.
Awesome. Take it away.
So, hello everyone. My name is Abdallah, and I am co-founder and CEO of Inara. And I feel very privileged because I was initially born in Morocco, and I studied in Morocco until I got my high school degree. I spent 1 year in Moroccan university before applying elsewhere and deciding to pursue my academic career in the US. I spent 3 educational years at a great community college in North California, where I got to work as a tutor, found my own club and work with my peers and do some research and do publications on the projects I worked on. And then I transferred to UC Berkeley under the electrical engineering and computer science department, where I've been studying there for 2 years. I feel like my unique path of experiencing Moroccan educational system, also the French one, the American community college, and then UC Berkeley allowed me to experience multiple educational technologies and see the direct impact they have in the quality of education. And this is where I got the idea from very early on to hopefully one day combine all the main features and amazing ones in the different techs in one and provide it to developing countries. So yeah.
Thank you for sharing. Anybody else wants to go next? If not, I'll call on people randomly.
I can go. I can graduate, so still technically a student. Still working on my master's. So yeah, my background is in basically CS and robotics, and just to make sure I answer. Manad.
Hi, I think you're cutting out a little bit. Do you mind repeating what you said Sorry. Anas? Oh no. Wait, was he cutting out for everybody else as well? Because I couldn't
Yeah,
hear
he was
parts of
cutting
what
out a
he
little
said.
bit from this.
Hmm. Anas, are you able to hear us right now, or? Let me message him. In the meantime, does somebody else want to go? And then we can just resume with him later.
I can go while we're waiting for Anas to come back. Can folks hear me?
Yeah.
Cool. Assalamualaikum everyone. My name is Natasha. I'm from Canada. That's where I was born and raised and grew up. I moved to the States about 5 years ago now. So I haven't been here for very long. I have a background in computer science. And so I majored in software engineering and minored in machine learning. Started my career off in the gaming industry. Actually, I was on the FIFA 14 team for the PS3 platform. I then moved into the smart city and smart building space, and I was programming firmware controllers to help save large commercial buildings. FIFA is pretty cool. Yeah, it's a pain in the butt to work on, but it's really cool. I was programming large buildings to help them save money on energy, right? And so we would identify whether spaces were occupied. Now think like sports stadiums, Olympic stadiums, airports, and if spaces were empty, we would automatically shut down the lighting and the heating. So I programmed those controllers. I then moved into product marketing actually, and so I did an internal switch from engineering in that same organization, and then I had an opportunity to move out to the Bay Area. So I took that. I started in the tech or the health tech industry. I'm still in the health tech industry. I started off as an engineer, and now I'm a product manager actually. And our company was acquired by United Healthcare about a couple of years ago, and so I actually run all of United Healthcare's mobile engagement strategy. That's what I do in the day. As Manal mentioned, I started a media company a couple years ago. Something that I was very passionate about is how media impacts culture and how it makes you perceive stereotypes, whether it's towards women, Muslims. I'm sure we've all come across something. And so one thing that really bothered me, this was a couple of years ago, was how women were always portrayed as being one-dimensional and in TV and shows. And so if you ever saw a woman that was more feminine, she was always portrayed as being dumb. If you ever saw one that was more good at math and science, she was always the nerd. Nobody really liked her. And if you actually dig into the psychology of it, these stereotypes actually impact the path that a young girl will choose later on in life in terms of her career, right? And so we already have not enough people graduating with STEM degrees. Now top off all of these narratives, and there you see a massive gender gap, right? And so that was the goal of Unboxed. And we can touch in on this in later questions, but media is hard to monetize, and social good media is even harder to monetize, right? And so that was the reason I had to shut that down. I was looking into tapping into like diversity and inclusion budgets, which is a lot of what social impact, products will do, right? And those budgets just dry up really quickly, especially when COVID hit, right? And so that's why that company was shut down. And then, as Manal mentioned earlier this year, I started a digital talk show called Sham Ki Chai, which means afternoon tea, where I interview Pakistanis doing cool things. And that again was me just being frustrated by the content coming out of Pakistan, and how unchanged it's been over the last 2 decades, and trying to do something new. So that's me, and thank you for listening.
Thank you. That was super interesting to hear, especially about the FIFA. I think a lot of the people in this room were like super impressed by that. And also, yeah, the stereotyping of women is too real. But yeah, inshallah, that'll change. Nadah or Anas, do you want to go?
Right. Is this clear?
Yeah,
we
that's
can
so
hear
much
you.
better now.
Yeah, okay. So usually what happens, I have a machine that usually I run like compute workloads on it. And so right now something's running. And so that's why it's probably, I just switched my laptop. It's definitely not an internet issue, it's just running ML models basically and training. So yeah, assalamualaikum everyone. My name's Anas. I'm one of the co-founders of Fetieh. And right now, basically, I think one clarifying point just earlier is that I'm still doing my master's, so I haven't finished. I was on leave last semester, so that gave me time to focus basically just on Tartil and Ramadan as well. While we brand ourselves as an AI company, really our goal is to try and just to put it bluntly is like get people addicted to the Quran. How do you incentivize folks to basically build a habit, keep a strong relationship with the Quran and with their faith? And one of the ways we're doing that is using AI powered tools. So that's my background. Prior to that, usually most of my work was just in robotics. So at Amazon, I worked on robotics tools. My research was all in robotics. But alhamdulillah, I was able to translate a lot of the work that I did there into basically AI and ML. So yeah.
That's amazing. And also it's like really new to see like AI intersecting with Quran and also just in general, like the Muslim community. So that's something that's really exciting. Nadah, your turn.
Perfect. Salam, everyone. Can you hear me? Okay. I'm Nadah. I graduated from UC San Diego in 2018 with my bachelor's in computer science, and then with my master's in 2019. I was specializing in systems and security. And so when I graduated, I wanted to stay in the security and privacy space. I like the idea of being closer to the user and building things to keep them safer and more secure on our platforms, which is why I also ended up joining Facebook. I would always joke and say that there's no bigger privacy problems to solve than privacy at Facebook. And so it's been exciting since I've joined. And so I've tried to incorporate, like outside of my day job as an engineer, social good or social impact in the projects that I'm working on and just things that I'm doing off to the side. And so as a student, I had started a club on campus where we would go teach computer science and hold workshops at different schools nearby. And this was because I had benefited so much from like a really strong community at my university where we had tutors and we had TAs, and I wanted to be able to give back. And then also establishing Muslim Women in Tech my last year in grad school. After realizing that I'd been coming up to the Bay Area for internships every summer, and I really love networking. And so I built up my own little network of Muslim women that I'd met in the industry. And they had really inspired me and motivated me. And I really valued them as role models. And looking back, I wish I had that when I started out. And so then I started a Facebook group with all the Muslim women in tech that I had met. And at that point, it was like 40 or 50 women, which I thought was insane. And then it grew from there. And so alhamdulillah, we have like this really vibrant online community that's been growing. I guess that was kind of one thing I can speak about. And then working at Facebook as a social platform, like there's social good that can come out of it, and there's some things that are not as good. And so I actually took a leave last half to work on one of the social impact teams at Facebook. This was the faith team and the charitable giving team. And so this was to build a feature Ramadan to help faith communities fundraise during the month. And so I can talk a little bit more about that later. So besides like my day job as an engineer working on privacy, I've also tried to take opportunities I can internally and externally to do some things for my community. So yeah.
Yeah, that's really cool. And I think you bring an interesting perspective to the table as somebody who's on like a big like FANG company, but still using that to transform social good and help faith communities, not just Muslims, but all faith communities. All right, so the first question I wanted to ask everyone, and you guys already kind of went into this a little bit, but I wanted to ask specifically, how did you come up with the idea of like creating these numerous organizations and knowing that you needed to create something new instead of building off of existing things that were already in the industry? And then feel free to start, whoever wants to go.
Sure, I can go first. So for me, it's again, my experience in Morocco. So when I experienced 1 year in the Moroccan university, they follow the French system. So they force you to take between 12 to 15 classes in a semester, which is like an absurd, crazy amount of classes in a semester. And I think their strategy is just to stress people out as much as they can, and people would leave. But the bad part about that was there was no educational technologies used. So you have to manage all your lecture notes, videos, assignment, everything manually by hand. So coming to the US, even though I had to take much less classes, I was very grateful and appreciative of the edtechs and the benefit that they provided me, especially when I transferred to UC Berkeley to see how I was able to even receive help and a lot of services outside of class. So it's by realizing that there is this issue that this technology is not accessible to everyone, knowing that every human being has the right to learn and to go through education, but only very few people are privileged to go through it. What really pushed me to like create my startup where I can combine all these main ones, have them in a nice bundle, and focus on providing them to developing countries. So
Super cool. And it's also really great to recognize like the education gaps in society, not just like in the US, but all around the world. And that's something that's technology has a big potential to help change. Yeah. Anybody else wants to start?
I can go. I think for me, a lot of it was, my own experience going through school. And so being told numerous times that, I don't look like someone who can be good at math or science was very frustrating. And also didn't understand what that meant, because what does someone even look like that is good at math and science? And then, growing up, realizing that a lot of other women experience this, and just talking to people, right? And so when you have an idea, I think, there's always this notion of like, oh, keep it a secret. Someone else is going to steal your idea. No one's going to steal your idea. Execution is very hard. Most people are just going to get bored, get tired, get whatever, and not actually move forward with it, right? And so the best thing you can actually do is talk to other people, like, hey, I'm thinking of doing this, right? And find out what else is out there and see where the market gap actually is, and if your product is there. Again, you can build a product to solve for something, right? And I think that's very important, because you don't want to reinvent the wheel. And you might find that part of what you want to build has already been built, right? And so you could integrate into that, and hey, it's not that expensive to build anymore, right? And so I think that's what I did. I just talked to people, a lot of women, because they were my target market in my first company, a lot of Pakistanis, because now they're who I'm targeting right now, and just tried to understand what they're looking for, if there is a gap, and how I can build something to solve for that.
Yeah, for sure. That sounds really cool. And also, yeah, sometimes it feels like things have already been done. And so kind of realizing that doesn't mean you have to like stop doing what you're doing. There's so much more that can be built off of that. Yeah. Anas or Nadah, want to go?
You can go first, Anas.
Sure. So I guess I can give just a brief history about Fetieh. It started out as a hackathon. Actually, I wasn't part of the original like hackathon that came up with the idea. It was basically just like collecting data to actually enable the AI technology to train, deep learning models that can actually identify Quran recitation. But like right after that idea, like after that hackathon, like I was introduced to it, and I was like, wait a minute, like, there's a whole like it's a solution looking for a problem, but the solution can unlock a whole plethora of experiences and potential, like just problem solved essentially with it. So we realized, like, there's a lack of innovation in the religious text space, specifically for the Quran. Like you'll find hundreds of Quran apps out there, and one plays audio, one shows you the mushaf, one plays audio and shows you the mushaf, one has tafsir, but there's really nothing that's innovative that keeps you attached to the Quran or keeps you attached to your faith, like actually nudges you to do better, or incentivizes you to do better, or even gives you feedback in real time. Like you always need to find an instructor, you always need to find someone to listen to you, or some something like that. So that's where the idea basically came from, and where we started to lean into. And given that we're one of the first few people in this space, like it's going to be a bit more difficult, but the goal is basically for us to at least build that initial foundation, so that anyone who comes after us is able to stand on our shoulders and just take it from there. And to be fair, like we owe a huge debt of gratitude to the folks who have contributed to like the open source community in Quran, from Quran.com to word by word ayah, all that stuff. There's a whole bunch of resources that have been put out in terms of like digitizing the Quran or like, you know, making it accessible. So we you know, we're standing on the shoulder of giants of the people who came before us, who were trying to work on basically making the Quran, like bringing technical solutions to the Quran. And we continue, like, you know, to uphold that by like contributing and, you know, leading the development for Quran.com, which I think is right now like one of the biggest websites used for just on web. So we're actively contributing to it and developing it and like improving the ecosystem. So yeah.
That's super cool. Also, the fact that it came out of a hackathon, I mean, you guys all take notes because you can see that hackathon ideas can become super impactful, and it doesn't necessarily need to stop at the end of the hackathon. It's something that you can build upon and expand your reach. They've gotten, mashallah, over 100,000 downloads, and so many people contributing to that open source recitations. And so that's super cool. Nadah, I know your perspective might be a little bit different,
I
but I
know.
think it's like super unique as well. And
Yeah, I
feel
was
free to
gonna
talk
say.
about like kind of like creating these new like interfaces on Facebook for faith communities as well.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think I have like an alternate perspective. I didn't start my own company. I'm kind of building off of what is an industry right now. And I think that approach that I've taken, at least right now in the world that we're living in today, like we rely on Facebook and Instagram. And sometimes you need to meet people where they are instead of maybe building something completely new and hoping that you can adopt them onto your platform. And so this kind of started last Ramadan, really abruptly once COVID hit and once everything went virtual. Like we were all scrambling, just trying to figure out what to do, especially with fundraising. None of our messages were really equipped to transition all of our fundraising online. You know, we rely on these massive fundraising banquets every year. And so, you know, one of the tools that we have at hand is Facebook, and a lot of messages ended up live streaming on Facebook. And that was a really important way to reach their community because we couldn't congregate physically. And so with live streams, Facebook has also been building their whole charitable giving platform. So most of you have probably seen creating a fundraiser on your birthday. And so basically what I helped support last year was enabling fundraising within live streams. And then what I worked on this year was enabling fundraising within events. And so the motivation for that, I actually pitched the idea was that a lot of times we have these fundraising banquets, we have these events that we create. And when you do create a Facebook event, why not add the ability to also raise money within that itself? And so this is just the idea of, you know, meeting people where they are, where we're already using Facebook and we can add features to help them for their specific use cases. And so that's always been my perspective, just using the position that I'm in wherever I am to see how I can incorporate social good there. And outside of that, Muslim Women in Tech has been another project where I had never really seen an organization of Muslim women in tech, so that just kind of seemed like a natural transition to like having an established organization for Muslim women to meet up and to connect with each other. Then yeah, that's the high level of what I've been doing.
Yeah, that's super cool. By the way, Muslim Women in Tech has like close to 2,000 members now, I think. So it's super exciting. All right, so the next question is kind of about issues that were faced during the process of like making organizations or working within an existing company to kind of bring in social impact. And so I know like Anas touched on this earlier where they were kind of creating AI in a space that didn't necessarily have AI before, and there wasn't necessarily like a precedent that they could work off of. And I'm sure that each and every one of you guys encountered different challenges and unique perspectives when it came to that. So if you guys want, feel free to like expand on like what kinds of challenges you guys faced and how you were able to combat that.
I can start here. One thing that's unique, I guess, about I don't know if it's unique, but that's interesting about the Islamic tech space or religious tech in general is that everyone thinks it has to be what we call free sabilillah. So anything that's related to like Islam or like, you know, religion like has to be free. And that has really like after looking at it, it's really hampered and minimized the potential impact that, you know, people can actually have on the space. So early on, you know, we were in that mentality as well, in that the project needs to be like free, open source, nonprofit, all that stuff. But then, outside of like a technical challenge, I think really what we had was more of like an organizational challenge. Is like, how do we put ourselves to be sustainable so that we can actually have an impact on Muslims and deliver value to them in the long term. So early on, we were open source, but then like we slowly migrated into more of like, actually kind of like a company startup role. We had volunteers. Instead, we moved over into like full-time roles and actually having people like have commitments and whatnot. So introducing that sort of organization and structure into that space, there's always going to be like stigmas and pushback, especially from the community. We've seen it like early on with the Quran.com community. Everyone was focused on open source. Everyone was working haphazard, trying to introduce, order to the chaos. There's a lot of entropy, and then you want to try and like manage that entropy and like keep it, easier to manage. I think that's been like a major challenge. So alhamdulillah, like we've made progress. Like we're introducing basically frameworks, guidance, nonprofit legal structures to like Quran.com for ourselves. We're actually setting up like an organization, thinking of like, financial stability, actually being able to like host and train machine learning models, like one of the most expensive things out there that you can do. So, thinking about that and, introducing it to a space that, shuns it or like avoids it has been like one of the challenges we had. So yeah.
Yeah, I think it's also like that was also one of like the things I wanted to like listen into you guys talk, the kind of striking that balance between being sustainable but also keeping like your intention and like the goals in mind of company value and like social impact, and so sticking on that route. But yeah, anybody else have some thoughts they want to contribute about their experiences and challenges? Or should I call on someone?
I mean, I can go. It's not much different from what Anas has experienced. Media is just hard to monetize. I mean, you have advertising models you can monetize with, but those are really getting you cents unless you have like mass amount of people viewing your content, right? And then content creation is just like a whole other side of the ball game, right? Where it's about quantity. You constantly need to be pushing out, new things. It's actually not even about quality. So as long as the algorithms actually promote quantity over quality, which is why you're seeing so much garbage, excuse my French, out there to watch, right? And so there's that, but then there's the whole engineering side of it, right? Of like, how do you get something to surface in front of the right person, who is your right user group, and so finding all of that information, right? And getting people engaged and sharing and liking and commenting on your stuff is what really gets you to go to then other companies and be like, hey, I want to partner with you, right? But then, like, I'll give you an example with Unboxed. And so one thing we would do is, we're merging Lifestyle magazine. It was like the Vogue for STEM, right? With like science and technology or whatever, right? And so one of the things we did is we had all of these like computer science programs we were partnered with at like Harvard and the UCs and whatever, and we would get the girls in the program to write lifestyle content for us, right? And so you have this chemist who's looking at, concealers and foundations and writing articles about like, hey, what is this about, right? But then you look at some of the products that are put out by big companies like Tinted or Drunk Elephant, and they actually have carcinogens in them, right? And so now you have this company, they want to partner with you. That's like $50,000-$60,000 of a partnership of reviews. But then you're like, am I going to promote something that is harmful? No, you're not. And so then you have to walk away from that money, right? And that's something you're going to have to see. And I actually had VCs that did not fund the company because they were like, hey, you're going to have to make some tough choices. Would you walk away in that situation? And I was like, I would 100% walk away in that situation. No, I'm not going to promote something that, that is bad. It's just, I can't do that. And they're like, well, sorry. we can't see ourselves funding you until you've grown more, right? And so you're going to have to make tough calls. It's not easy. You will have to walk away from money, and you do have to stay really close to your mission. And so just remember that. And sometimes it's better to find a monetization model outside funding, right? Because then you have more control over it, right? As soon as you bring in outside capital and you have someone on your cap table, they have power in calling the shots, right? So you have to be very, very careful in who you're involving yourself with when you're building something out for social good.
Yeah, that makes sense. I kind of have like a follow-up question based on that. Like, how can you be sure that somebody who is potentially joining as a VC or like another partner is like gonna stick to that mission and not like push you to do something that doesn't align?
I mean, you can't. You can never be 100% sure because you actually never know until there's actually like, whatever hard dollars on the table. You don't know how someone's going to react, right? But I would just get to know them a lot and a lot of people, I feel like raising funding is like the thing to do in the Valley. Like, oh, you're building something, okay, go raise a bunch of money, right? But I would argue, try and see if you can build your own sales mechanism and fund yourself before you actually go out and raise funding, because sometimes people don't need the funding and they have like solid business models right there, right? But if that's a path you do need to take, I would think about not just like obviously getting to know these people by spending a lot of time with potential VCs, but also looking at other portfolio companies they've invested in, seeing what that portfolio looks like and what those companies stand for, talking to other founders of those companies and being like, hey, what has your experience been like? This is sort of what I'm worried about. And the Valley seems big when you're here, but it's a small bubble. And so, your reputation is your reputation and people know it. And so the second you start doing your due diligence and talking to other people, you'll get a good sense of how a particular organization or a person is very quickly.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think it's important to like know you're picking the right people and just know that they're going to be there for a long time and have power in like all those decisions. So honestly, it kind of sounds scary because it's like almost like you're giving a part of your trust to them and you're not sure if it's going to come back. Yeah. Anyone else have anything to add on their struggles or challenges and how they encountered them?
I can go next. So for me, I would say the most challenging part was the technical development. We were able to like make great prototypes, great designs, do multiple iterations of them. But what is very challenging for a tech startup is finding the good engineers that would implement it, and especially if it's a complex and deep platform, and also like finding that good balance of if you're trying to like monetize from social good, there are a lot of limitations and restrictions, which makes like getting the laborers or being able to have fast development also very challenging. And I would say that a good solution for it is to really tap deep in the connections and try to see who are the people that are interested in what you're doing, that have the same vision, that care about the problem, and trying to find ways to like get those people involved and be part of it so that like they can help in the technical side and reduce the risk and be able to manage it financially.
Yeah, for sure. Tapping into talent, but also tapping into passion is super important. Nadah?
Yeah, I can talk a little bit about one of my major challenges, which was often being the only Muslim in the room, working on a faith team, which is surprising. And Islam was the second largest religion. And the faith team, we are building features and we're testing and we're releasing them to some of our partners first. And when like 95% of our partners are Christian groups, it's kind of like there's a disconnect there. And so I constantly felt like I had to keep pushing to make sure we had that representation, which was slightly frustrating, but it just kind of made that, put that responsibility on me and made me like really take that seriously, being in that space to be able to be that voice and to make sure that they have the connections with the Muslim community that they need. And I've been really involved with the Muslim community. And so being able to bring that to my work there was really important.
Yeah, for sure. That's really sad that you were the only Muslim on the team, but hopefully still able to encounter those and like make sure that your voice was being heard. That's super important. I feel like that's kind of like a thing you run into anywhere you go in like the tech industry, whether as a woman or like a person of color or a Muslim. My next question is kind of based on that journey and like the challenges you guys encountered. If you could go back and change anything, what would you change, if anything? And feel free to take a moment to think about it. I think it's just helpful for students and participants to be able to like look at other people's journeys and see, kind of learn from them.
I think for me it is trying to like reach out to more investors early on. Not that we didn't try, not that we tried, but we had enough resources from bootstrapping and our savings and our close community that we developed and we grew with what we had, and it worked out well. However, when there is a financial incentive, people are more motivated, they are more serious, and they do put in the amount of hours that are necessary. However, it's pros and cons. What's really amazing about doing it this way is you really see who's there for the journey and for the mission and who's there just for the benefits. So yeah, I would say that's it.
Awesome piece of advice. And also, yeah, tapping into that is pretty important. Anas, Nadah, Nitasha, anything to add? And if you can't think of anything yet, feel free, let someone else chime in.
Yeah, I would say it's whenever you're building something, it's almost like there's a need of you needing to perfect it before you can push it out there, and that's a huge mistake that people make, because you do not need to perfect it before you put it out there. You'd be surprised, how much people will not even notice the imperfections or find a way to work around them. And so that's just something that I noticed that I wish I didn't have, especially something in media, like, you need it to be perfect. The post has to be perfect. The language has, no, it doesn't. People don't notice that, right? And now that I talk to a lot of founders, that's something that I coach them on too, right? Of like, just get it out there, see what the issues are, because you might not even see problems because you're so invested in this product, right? And then just fix it fast and then get it out there again and fix it and keep continuing to work on it and fixing it. It's more of an iterative, constant process than like one big release, right? And then a little tidbit there, I don't know how many of you have heard the story of like the first iPhone launch and the presentation that Steve Jobs gave, but none of the iPhones actually worked. There are 7 iPhones behind his desk, and all of them crashed at different points in time. And so he actually didn't have a working product when he launched this to the world. And he just practiced the presentation really well, where he knew, hey, I'm going to do this and I'm going to press this button. This is going to crash. I'm going to go back and quickly switch it. And then I'm going to use this other phone, demo phone or whatever, right? And so that's just like a big thing to keep in mind, of like, hey, it really doesn't have to be perfect.
Yeah, that makes sense. I feel like that's something I have to often remind myself as well, like whether it's like a school project or like a side project I'm working on, that it doesn't have to be perfect. And I feel like in the real world, like it's not necessarily about pitching a perfect product, necessarily about pitching an idea and like a concept that people can like latch on to. But yeah, I think that's something we can all learn from, because honestly, at the heart of everybody, it's like some kind of desire for it to be perfect before the public sees it. But yeah, I think that's really good words of advice.
Yeah, I'm gonna just tag along that. Unfortunately, we can't really do that in our space, but because you can't really make mistakes with the Quran. Like, it's either right or wrong. But I will admit that we did go ahead and launch MVPs and move fast and break things. If any of you ever saw the first prototype of our like follow along or recitation, we still have the code archived, and I just look back and it's horrendous. You look back and you're like, what did I do here? But it's fine, because it's all just a learning experience from there. But one thing that that's different from that, I think is fine. It's also important to find a good team. But likely, and also like you guys probably like if this is your first hackathon, you're probably gonna have more hackathons in the future, but you'll likely find a good team, inshallah. If you do, that's good, that's great, but don't like you know don't like be sad or be like annoyed if like someone decides to go on and do something else. You that's in my opinion, that's good because if you want to take something and like put it in production and actually like deliver something that's of value, it needs a lot of commitment, it needs a lot of time, and it needs a lot of energy and resources. So it's fine if people early on switch. I mean, that's what happened with us early on. Like the original people who worked on like the first prototype or even the first like hackathon. I think the only person that's still from like available from there is Abdallah. Everyone else basically was like after that was different, and then like when we actually founded like the company, like the whole team and the dynamics and everything was different. So like early on, it's fine if your team members switch. It's important to find a good team, but it's not that big of a deal if if something doesn't go right, still stick, you can stick to your plan, stick to your guns. But like you can always find someone else to help you work out. But finding a good team is important, and just emphasize on that. So yeah.
Yeah, one of the things I would change, or advice I would give, is also around people. And it's looking back, I wish I didn't always think that I needed to do everything on my own, right? Like I was in this, if I kept going down that route, like I would burn out. And I had burnt out in the past from doing all of that. And so I would say it usually just takes one person to get the ball rolling, and then look for people that are enablers and supporters and that really believe in your mission and your goals, and then bring them on board. And then you can build off of that motivation together. And so like finding a good team, kind of like what Enes was saying, and also like don't ever think that you're in it on your own. And there's always people there that also.
Awesome. Thank you guys for sharing that. And yeah, for the last 2 points, team is super important. I feel like I've noticed that as well. But yeah, it can be demoralizing, I'm sure, when people flake, but it's okay because you found a good team and everything worked out, mashallah. And wow, look at you guys now. Kind of like, I think you mentioned like burnout, Nada. And so like, I kind of wanted to go off of that and ask, a lot of you guys were still in school. Anas is a master's student. Abdallah is still in Berkeley. Nada, you were, I think, like still in school when you founded Muslim Women in Tech, and Nitasha, you were working at Rally Health while doing a lot of like side stuff. And so I wanted to ask, how did you like manage all those different things and not get burnt out and still like manage to do good in like all of them, mashallah?
For me is mainly using a lot of Google Calendar. You just have to like take advantage of every single slot you have there. And usually how I do it is I try to plan my week and try to just fill all my days with as many things as I can. But then of course, nothing goes usually according to plan. So it's also very important to set your priorities and what is actually more important that week to get done. And by just like playing around, usually you don't get everything done, but as long as you get what's important, it's good. And the biggest advice I would give to people if they want to work on a startup or a side project while going to school is pick something that you really love doing. So for me, although I put in like 30 hours per week into my startup, it wasn't really work since I really, really enjoyed what I was doing and I got a lot of pleasure and satisfaction from it. So when you love what you do, it's not work. Well, at least that's what I tell myself. So that's how it works out.
Just gonna answer this question by reiterating Nada's point here. Try and delegate. Like you don't have to do everything yourself. And I think it's really important for you to just know what you're good at, what you're not good at, and what you need to hire for or find volunteers for. Or, one thing I use is this, it's like a tidbit. It's a site I found called Acadium, and it gives me interns, like 4 interns. I have 3 interns for 3 months and they spend 10 hours a week just on anything I want them to spend time on, right? And so I was able to just like not not fill up my calendar that way, because now I'm not doing like a bunch of like minute things that I don't need to. Also, I think this is from a content creation lens, but you know, from that lens, you just batch create content, right? People think that like you sit there and you're making things every day. No, you're actually like locking yourself in a room for a week, making 6 months worth of content, scheduling it, and then not having to worry about it for the next like 6 months, right? And then using that other time to like promote, you know, work on partnerships, work on sales, work on all of these other things, right? And so from a content creation lens, if that's something you want to get into, then that's huge, right? Try and do that, and just balance your life out. But you're never going to get it right. No one ever gets it right. You will burn out, and you'll learn, and then you'll iterate, you know, and you'll see what how to try something new next, right? And it's just a process.
Yeah, those both sound like really good piece of advice. Like the calendar thing, Google Calendar. That's fitting. Yeah, Google Calendar is a lifesaver, especially when you're balancing school and then also, yeah, working with team members and being able to delegate. That is a skill in of itself. And being able to prioritize different things and kind of iterate on everything is really important. But yeah, Anas, I love the meme you said. I feel like that's pretty accurate sometimes. So do you want to continue where that leaves off and talk about how it's been juggling Tortillo and sometimes Amazon with Tortillo and sometimes Tortillo with school?
Yeah, this is hilarious because I think it's true. Just don't know how to manage my time. Well, I guess I do manage my time, but I think the important thing is delegation, is knowing how to delegate, when to delegate, and who to delegate to. There was a framework, and I'm trying to remember how it was like, but basically like you as like the founder or like the CEO or like whatever, your goal is basically like to do the first iteration and then at least try to identify like the process and, you know, the necessary information you need to convey to someone else. You put that process in place and then you give it to someone else and you let them take care of it, you let them do it. The things that, you know, that only you can do and no one else can do, like those are going to be very rare. Like the things that you're specialized in, those you should focus on and do, but the other things you should delegate. But I mean, like during Amazon, like it was pretty interesting. Like usually I'd wake up like 3, 4 a.m., get some code done, go to Fetieh with Muhammad Musa, my co-founder. We'd basically like we'd brainstorm like at the gym or something. We'd go to work, and then in the evening sometimes we'd work on like the side project, and then that was like usually our weekdays. Weekends are a bit more chill. But now everything is all over the place, especially with COVID. Like yesterday I was in New York and I came back same day. It was pretty crazy just trying to meet different people. So it's been hectic. It will be hectic. You need to know your limits. Some people are more, you know, capable of just like going without sleep. I can't. So, you know when, like, plan for ahead of time when you can. But yeah, so I guess the two key takeaways is like plan and delegate, but like, you know, you will burn out, but like you know, Natasha mentioned is you'll iterate essentially, and you'll learn like how to improve and optimize. So yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And also like the thing about limits, I feel like in the Silicon Valley, there's so much like glorification of just putting in like 80 hours of work a week, which is like not good. And so having that life and like work balance is super important. And also, yeah, delegating, I think that's been said by multiple of you guys. So I had one last question, and then after that we'll do Q&A if anybody from the audience has questions. The last question I had from me was, as you might know, HalalHacks has several different like judging criterias, many of which are social impact based. So whether that's Muslim community development, social equity, stuff like that. So do you guys have any advice for people in the hackathon participants, or maybe just people outside who are like watching this on Facebook Live and thinking about side projects, advice for them on like how they can get started and how they can tackle different issues that come up?
I mean, I would kind of just say work on what you're passionate about and what you're excited about, like what Abdallah was saying, where it doesn't even feel like work when it's something that you really enjoy doing. So making sure that you find that, and you also find people that are excited to work on it with you, I think that's the recipe for success.
To add to that, I would say, try and make sure you're solving a problem and you've identified your problem correctly and how you're there to solve it, and that market gap exists. And so I think it's supposed to be like 70% research, 30% execution or something. And so make sure you do your research and your due diligence, and understanding what the problem is, who your user is, and how you're going to solve for it before you actually go and build something.
Yeah, definitely agree that market research is important. I remember there was like this challenge I was doing in high school, and part of it was like making like a project or an app. And there was so much time spent that they spent the curriculum on like market research. And as like a 16 or 15-year-old, I was like, why are we spending this much time? But yeah, that's super important. I think I've realized that. But yeah, Abdullah, I think you went off mute. Want to go off of that?
For me, there is this quote that I learned since I was very young, and it's always proven itself accurate, is necessity is the mother of invention. And the reason why I decided specifically to do education, because I am passionate about it. I knew that education is what would give me a better future, but there are multiple parts of it that were very frustrating, and I wish they were different. And it's that like frustration and like being upset at what's currently up there that motivated me and pushed me to do something I like. So what I suggest to people, there are a lot of things that frustrate us, but we just adapt and we move on. But if you actually take a second and write all the things that upset you or think could be better, you can compile a pretty good list. And from there, you can start and try to narrow it down.
Yeah, I feel like project ideation is sometimes kind of stressful, kind of figuring out like what you want to do, and making sure that you're prioritizing something that you're passionate about. Anas, did you have anything to add?
No, you guys, hit the hammer on the nail there. I think that was all pretty good. But like +1 definitely for the market research. Like we learned that the hard way is that, initially we were focusing a lot on just like building tech and, and being engineers, just building stuff. But really what we needed to do is go out there, talk to people, like, talk to Muslims, instructors, shiu, whatever it was, like anyone who had some relationship to the faith, and like understand what their problems were. We didn't even like when we talk with people, like we didn't ask them like about their we didn't ask them about like specific Quran workflows. We just talked to them about their problems, like, hey, what are some issues you're having with like, building a good habit or relationship with your faith? What are some, things you've tried? What is stuff you do? And just trying to learn the pain points is important, and doing that market research. So yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you all for sharing that. I'm going to check if there's anything in the chat. Yeah, anybody in the participants who has questions for these amazing experienced Muslim individuals, feel free to put them in the chat or raise your hand. Okay, I just got a chat. So any advice for fresh graduates striving to enter into the tech market? What are the most important things to focus on while looking for opportunities in the tech market?
The one thing I had a discussion recently with a friend of mine. He's also recently graduating. I hate to give this answer, but really it depends. So if you're going into software engineering and you want to, that you want to play like some entrepreneurial role in the future, like you already have an idea and you want to work on it, but you're not sure how to best execute. Start reaching out to startups, start, trying to engage them, cold email the founders and tell them, hey, I'm interested in like this project that you're working on. I've done X, Y, and Z, and this is how I can add value to your company, and try to like work with them. You'd be surprised. I think it was very interesting. I met someone online who basically was in high school. He cold DM'd the founder. He's like, hey, I just want to learn and work with you guys. And he was like, he got basically promoted to just like under the CTO, like he's right out of high school. So you'd be surprised how far that goes. But for those of you like who aren't sure of your skills, you wanna play it safe. And this is also like, it's not like a wrong or right path. Like it's what, suits you. Do go look out, for those, larger companies, more established companies, so that you can learn the best practices. I think it was really beneficial, like for myself, that I got to work at Amazon, even if it was just for a year. There was a lot of value in understanding like how to actually work with AWS, how to build these kind of systems, how to scale, how to put things into production, design, all that stuff, stuff that goes around in engineering. So there's a whole learning experience there as well. That it's generally like unique to those companies, but sometimes you find them in mid to later stage startups as well. So it really depends on just like what your ambitions and goals are. So
Yeah, that makes sense.
One thing to add, leak code, it's an unfortunate part of the process. It sucks, but yeah, like early on, just if you want to work in the software field, like you're gonna have to get your hacker rank and leak code game up. But once you're done, like after that, it's piece of cake.
Yeah, wow, leak code. We have a whole like class on leak code in Berkeley. I think Nitasha, Nadah,
wow.
muted. Feel free to chime in.
Yeah.
You want to go first? Or?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, kind of don't think that you're married to your first full-time job. There's always gonna be room to move around, to try different things. Maybe your first job is not your dream job, but it's something that can help get your foot in the door, and then maybe introduce you to some people where you can build up that network and those connections to move into a role or a position or a company that you're more interested in. And so just keeping your options open and knowing that like the road doesn't end there, and that it is really difficult as a new grad finding a job and finding something that you're excited about. So just kind of taking it step by step. It may not be perfect in the beginning, but keeping an open mind with it.
Yeah, I wanted to add to what Anas was saying. I +1 the starting at a big company. Even if you want to be an entrepreneur, and it sucks that it works this way, but there's a lot of social capital that comes with, hey, I worked at Facebook or Amazon or Netflix, right? Whether that's from people that want to work with you or people that want to invest in you. There's VCs that will look at grad school, like, they'll be like, oh, Berkeley X Facebook, you're in Series A, here you go, here's some seed money, right? And it sucks that it works this way, but that's just the reality of it, right? And so just understand that, right? And so that's one thing. The other thing, and this is more of like a minute detail, but a lot of resumes get put through some AI engine right now, right? And so make sure you know exactly what terms to use on your resume when you're applying for roles, and what's getting picked up right now, because obviously there's not a HR person sitting behind a computer looking through 1,000 resumes. No, they're getting a subset of it, right? And so make sure that yours can pass that initial screening. And so that's just a very tactical thing. And the last thing is, please remember to build your network outside of work. I think that's very important. And so reach out to folks on LinkedIn, people whose careers you find interesting. You'd be surprised, people love talking about themselves. And so just tell them you want to take them out for a coffee or something and just learn about what their careers, and there's no ask, it's just getting to know people that can potentially be mentors for you, right? And make sure you continue to do that. When I started off in my career, I would send 100 LinkedIn messages a day, or sorry, a week, not a day, a week. And I would get 10 responses and 1 coffee out of it. And I kept at that for about 2 or 3 years, until I felt like I had a big network that was built, right? And so just continue at that. That's very, very important.
Thank you for sharing. And yeah, I feel like sometimes like it feels like the system is rigged. And also, yeah, I feel you on that LinkedIn messaging. Cold emailing people is a struggle. I think Abdallah, you're unmuted. Feel free to hop in.
Yeah. For me, I would say before trying to go to the industry, I would highly advise everyone to like work on independent projects or a club, but really try to build something, and not with a very surface level scope, like how it's usually done in a class or from just like a one side, but like a full project where you have to wear multiple hats, where you have to dive deep into like the features you're building, where you can show them to someone, get feedback and iterate over it. In my opinion, wearing multiple hats first helps you decide on what exactly you want to do. Like tech or software engineer is a very, very broad term. And only by working on a big project that you get to know exactly what you like and what you're passionate about. And also by going deep and working on projects, and that you can show the recruiters or the people that are going to hire you the way how they're going to see your passion about it and how you executed it, and yeah, and just like how much you are able to learn by yourself and how well you are able to do it speaks for itself. Because in reality, when they get you, they just want you to do the same thing but for their task and their project. So you doing it in a different circumstance shows them that you can get the job done. But yeah, that's it.
One more thing to add to that, a lot of young grads will think like, oh, we're going to go to a super small company and there are higher chances for me being hired. If you don't have experience, no one's going to hire you as like a first engineer or first product manager. You don't want that responsibility. You don't want to be the first PM or first engineer on a team with zero experience, because that's a lot of responsibility on your shoulders, right? And so when you are starting out, unless you have like an idea that you're working on actively and you have like a team or something and you can work with that, that's great. But if not, if you're scoping out companies, go for mid to large size companies. Just you need the mentorship and you need to be able to fail safely without having to worry about, you know, like everything crashing and burning. So that's just an FYI.
I really love the point about knowing that you should be able to fail safely. I think that's honestly, I think I just need to remember that at some points, because I don't know, I see all like these like LinkedIn posts of people fresh out of college starting these startups, and I'm like, how do they do it? And like being part of like those like managerial roles in the beginning. If anybody doesn't have anything else to add, I can go on to Omar. I think he's had his hand up.
Awesome. Jazakallah khair. Firstly, big Jazakallah khair to HalalHacks, because I don't think we have enough spaces where we bring Muslim professionals and, you know, tech founders together. So Jazakallah khair for that. So my question is more specifically for Anas. Mashallah, a lot of times when we come together, we can accomplish much bigger things. So I know Tartil merged last year with the Iqra, which was another, I guess, Quran-based app. So I'm wondering, like, how did that, because that story kind of inspired me quite a bit. So I was wondering, like, where was, you know, the story behind it? How did it all go about?
Yeah, I mean, I think that was like predestined, to be honest. I think it was I don't know if you guys know. So I have my partners Abdallah and Muhammad Musa. We were all in the Bay Area at one point. Muhammad worked on Iqra. I think it was like 2 years before Tartil, or like even the idea came up. And then Abdul worked a bit on during like the hackathon on trying to like bring the idea of you know, speech to text for the Quran. So we basically just got together and we're like, hey, you know, let's, like, we're working on the same thing. Let's just work together on it. And like between like location expertise and just like, you know, the same social network, we're like, yeah, let's just do the same thing. So that was, it was a pretty straightforward decision. That's not always the case. I think this was pretty rare. Like for us, we wanted to, like, for example, integrate with Quran.com. That there were some precursor, like, you know, events that occurred, but, you know, it was like a few months in the making essentially for something like that to happen. And it's still like, you know, it's still work in progress. Like we still have a long way. Like, sure, we have some of the development roadmap in place, but obviously the execution and whatnot still needs to be done. So it's, if you know, there's like at least 80% overlap in terms of not just technology, but, you know, also vision, mission, and, you know, just like alignment overall, then, you know, both like there's going to be synergy between both parties, and, you know, it'll usually just click and work. But otherwise, I wouldn't usually like to force things on other people. Like I had a call with the founder of like Pillars app. If you guys don't know it, it's like a new prayer time app. They're doing something completely different, and you know, we're both of the same mentality that they should focus on prayer times. We should focus on the Quran. There's no reason to, like, you know, have some overlap. There's no reason to just, like, you know, put everything in one place. Like, know where to, like, specialize, where to focus. You know, some people are good at one thing. They should just do that. You know, you shouldn't really force, you know, those kinds of mergers, like I would say, like M&As, mergers and acquisitions. So yeah, hopefully that answered your question.
It definitely does. Jazakallah khair. Awesome.
All right. We had one more question that came up in the chat earlier. How should someone reach out to a company that completed part of the idea that you were already looking to implement? I've been told to send it as feedback using the app's email before, but I'd be super interested in contributing even for free. And this came from Safat, if I pronounced that correctly.
I would just ping the founder on LinkedIn. If it's a smaller company, I've done that before, and they've responded. If it's a larger company, then say if it's like a Facebook or something, then try and find the product person that works for that team, or an engineer that works on that team specifically, and just ping them. You'd be surprised on how open people are. Once you just get over the initial hurdle of like random cold emails and messages, you'll be surprised to know how warm and open people are in responding. And so try that.
Yeah, that's some really good feedback. I think it's a little scary, like being like, I think your idea can be taken further, but yeah, I think that's a great point. And I feel like I've also seen like people who are looking for opportunities, emailing like pretty top up people in companies and being like, hey, I took this idea that you guys had and added like a side feature to it. This is like a prototype, and I was wondering like what you guys think about it. I've heard of a lot of like successful cases of people doing that, so kind of ties into the same realm.
That's really successful. And some companies, I mean, I know Zillow did this where like they'll put out their problems and hold hackathons as well, right? And so they
Yeah.
were solve for the Z estimate issue that they had where they weren't getting that correct. And so they just put that out there. They had a hackathon, and then team just worked on it, right? And so I would even do some research there and see if those companies are holding something like that.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that they did a hackathon specifically for that. Although I've heard of like Microsoft and like Facebook having public hackathons. But yeah. Did anybody have anything else to add on that question, or slash to the audience? Is there anybody else who had a question? Feel free to type in the chat or raise your hand.
Yeah, just a quick note on that. Like, we were working on some speech to text models, and Facebook came out with Wave 2 Vec 2, which is like this amazing model. And it was done by this Egyptian brother named Dr. Abdallah Muhammad. Amazing guy. And he's been very, very helpful, mashallah. Like, we just reached out to him and we're like, hey, we're working on this problem. We want to pick your brain, get your feedback. And he basically, like, he literally gave us like a line of like a whole roadmap of what we need to do in order to like reach the stage that they're at, or like what we shouldn't do. And he's like, all right. And then he even went into like technical details, and he's like, you need to do X, Y, and Z, A, B, and C. And he also looked at it from like not just like the technical perspective, but from the business perspective. So it was very interesting, like just reaching out and telling him like, hey, we're doing X, and we saw you already did Y. These are very similar. Like, where do you think there's any overlap, or where can you get feedback? It was nice because like, he's a Muslim and he's like in the space, and like, so it relates to him and the technology he's doing. So that was a nice overlap. And generally, like, you'll find that to be the case, with anyone else like that's working in the same space or technology. They'll notice inefficiencies. You'll notice inefficiencies. Likely, what's going to happen is like there might not be like some grand collaboration, but at least like you'll be able to identify like the niches that you can focus on and thrive in.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I feel like a lot of times we think that the Silicon Valley is really cutthroat and nobody wants to help each other. But it seems like there's so many people, especially in like the Muslim community, everybody's like willing to help and being able to see that camaraderie and everything. Okay, I think there's a question from Ismail. I've interned at a few companies and I found it really hard to be passionate about their mission. And companies that do have interesting missions around things that I enjoy, like education or social impact, don't pay as much. Do you have any thoughts about why it's hard to find jobs that pay well and that have a focus around social impact?
I would say from my experience, paying good comes from the company generating good money, which also comes from a good business model. And usually that business model comes from, if you want better features, advanced features, and so on, you have to pay more, which is very contradictory with even the thought of selling something for social good, because it means that people do not have the money, can't afford what is good. And the challenge is to investigate multiple business models and find something that is also accessible by the people that do not have the money, but also that is profitable for the company, which is like a very, very hard problem to do and to solve. And yes, well, at least that's the thing from my experience. However, how it is solved is if multiple people use it and if there is the power of the number, then it is good. But initially, I think what could be good is if there is value, maybe having the company go and generate money from companies and people that are willing to pay, and eventually switch in and having a different business model so that everyone can afford it can work out. But yeah, that's my opinion on it.
Yeah, I think sometimes finding that balance is hard, especially for new grads. Did anybody have anything else to add to that? Also, I know that we're running a little bit over, so if you need to hop off, feel free. If you want to add anything, or if you have any final thoughts, as people who have had a lot of experience in many different companies and organizations, feel free to chime in, and inshallah we can wrap this up in a few minutes.
I can go first because I'll have to hop off soon. But I first just wanted to say Jazakallah khairan for everybody behind the scenes working on HalalHacks. I was so excited when I saw it. And the Muslim hackathon that they had organized last year too. I think it's amazing that you guys are building off of it every year. And just to reiterate some of the other points about just reaching out to people, networking, cold messaging on LinkedIn. You never know where you're gonna find your next startup co-founder, whether that's at a hackathon or whether that's just through courses or through internships or whatever it is. And so building up your network is really important. Silicon Valley is, the tech bubble is actually pretty small sometimes, and knowing people will always help you. And with that, I'll have to hop off, but Jazakallah khairan everybody. It was great hearing everyone's stories on the panel as well.
Jazakallah khairan for contributing and taking all of your time to speak about your experiences. I think I can speak for all the participants when I say that we all learned a lot. Thank you. Yeah, feel free to hop off.
Okay, salam everyone.
Walaikum salam. Anybody, if you guys want to add anything else as we wrap up? Okay, well, if no one wants to add anything, Jazakallah khairan for being part of this panel, you guys. We really appreciated you coming and taking the time out of, I'm sure, what must have been a Monday busy evening. And yeah, maybe if you guys want to potentially drop your contact information in the chat so that if participants want to reach out to you, they can. I'm sure you have a lot of experience that we didn't get through today. But inshallah, you're able to connect with other participants here. That said, I don't think I have anything else in my head.
The participants here, I'm assuming, are all on the Discord channel, right?
Yeah, they should be.
Yeah, you guys can reach me on Discord, so I'll be there, inshallah.
What's the question? Someone asked, are we still up?
Oh. Sure. Do you want to send it in the chat, or do you want to unmute?
Carla, I'm wondering if you guys can hear me.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, so just a small question, are you guys familiar with any open source projects that a person can contribute to now that's related to Islam or specific?
Quran.com. I mean, I think that's a pretty big open source project, and if you're also looking for a specific tech stack, that'd be one thing to keep in mind.
Yeah, that's a good answer. I appreciate that. Where can I find out more about that?
So I mean, if you go to the Quran.com website, towards the bottom, they have invitations to the Slack channel and the GitHub. Even if you just Google, if you search on GitHub Quran.com, you'll find all their repositories. In general, I've found contributing to open source projects, usually requires a bit more senior experience. just because sometimes the nature of those projects are a bit more mature. But one thing that's actually interesting is, despite the general complexity of like machine learning projects, projects like Hugging Face, and I think there was something from Google, I forgot. But basically those are the kinds of projects that, you know, you can usually help out with. Social good, open source, yeah, I'm not sure, but the things that I can think of on the top of my head is just Quran.com, and yeah.
Yeah, awesome. I like the answer. I looked it up, so then I can definitely follow through with that.
All right. Anybody got anything to add?
I put my LinkedIn for anyone who wants to reach out to me. And I would also want to say that Moodle is open source for education, and they have a big like repo and a lot of features going on. So if you're interested by education, you can always just check it out.
Awesome. Thank you. Nitasha, I saw you also unmuted.
Oh, no, I just wanted to thank you for putting this together. This has been great. I'm just going to drop my LinkedIn right now. Let me just get the link. But thank you. This was wonderful. You know, looking forward to see this grow.
Thank you so much for coming. We really appreciated all your insight and experience. All right. Well, then we could start wrapping up while y'all are putting your contact information. Anas is on Discord. Abdallah and Nitasha put their LinkedIn in the chat, so feel free to reach out to them. I'm sure they'll be happy to help you. And then that said, thank you all for coming. Thank you, speakers, for being here. Jazakallah khairan. And yeah, that's it from me.
Take care, guys. Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam.
No.